Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the Behaviorist Book Club. Right off the bat, I want to say Happy New Year's and welcome to another full year that we are going to be grinding out research articles dedicated to the practitioner. So stay tuned. I got a lot planned this year, and I think you guys are going to love it. Remember, we are always going to be a community of research-focused practitioners just trying to stay in touch with the current literature. You can find more on my website, behavioristbookclub.com, my Facebook page, Behaviorist Book Club, and my Facebook group, Daily ABA Research Share. All right, guys, we're going to be hopping right on the Perspectives of Behavioral Science article. Very fun article to read. Nice to see the different types of articles published across the different journals. This is, of course, the flagship for the Association for Behavior Analysis International Journal. So interesting kind of to note that this is a academic style publication. Well, it's academic, but it's specifically focused for the practitioner. Like, it's not applied, it's practitioner focused. And we're going to be reading The Use of Self-Monitoring in Technology to Increase Physical Activity, a review of the literature. This was by Page and colleagues. And this was published in 2020. I did find this, guys, because it is the New Year's special. I think I'm going to make it a tradition where every New Year's, in honor of those seeking to better themselves through New Year's resolutions, we're going to be doing some type of physical management or obesity or self-management type article. And this year I found this review over self-monitoring, which is just, I've always been super interested in. I've gone through my own stages of, losing weight and gaining weight and getting healthy and not getting healthy and, becoming a runner and then, getting hurt and not running. Anyways, all these different standard behavior change patterns that happen in somebody's life based on different things like being busy or, having a child or things like that. And I've always tried to use some form of self-monitoring. I've always tried to say, like, all right, if I go on a run, I get to check off my box. And when I check off all 5 boxes, I get, a bag of candy or something. And it never worked for me. I've never had a self-monitoring system that worked. The only thing that has been able to consistently work for me is really aversive events in a way. Like something happening that is so aversive, I'm willing to behave to avoid it. Whether that be hitting a certain number on the scale, whether that be, avoiding looking bad in front of somebody that I care about, whether that be going on a family vacation and not wanting to be the heaviest person on the beach, whatever that may be, and whatever, health issue that may involve, I've never been able to use self-monitoring, and it's always been this like aversive contingency. So I was hoping to read this article and find out some tips to not only share for myself, but also share with you guys on what our science has found out about self-monitoring. So this paper, of course, is not actually about New Year's resolutions. It specifically talks about the obesity epidemic and how health-related inactivity issues are bad for everyone, from the actual person, of course, undergoing the health concerns to the country as a whole in terms of rising healthcare and rising costs. It's something it's arguably one of the most socially significant behaviors that we can work on, which is why, as I'm about to show you, the dearth of studies in this topic is quite sad. It's quite disappointing. So I think it's important to get some definitions out of the way because not a lot of people have experience, including myself, in actually practicing this type of work. So we first want to look at moderate to vigorous physical activity. That's kind of the general catch-all term for things that we're going to be analyzing here. It's the dependent variable of sorts. So moderate to vigorous physical activity is compared to metabolic equivalence, which is the level of oxygen used during an activity. And moderate are things like yoga, hiking, walking, whereas vigorous would be things like basketball, jogging, running, or tennis. I think these are pretty subjective. Obviously, like hiking can be very vigorous, and jogging can be very moderate. But I think that if you are, breathing heavily, you can only speak in, maybe 3 to 5 word utterances at a time, you're probably leaning on the vigorous side of things. I next want to talk about this self-monitoring. I'm going to use the term self-monitoring, but it also could be self-recording or self-observation. This is typically actually a treatment package that's broken up into things like goal setting, feedback, posted results, which is a form of feedback, or even any type of monitoring system that could be incorporated into a general system, like a token board for yourself or something like that. This type of self-monitoring is used in a wide variety of fields. It's been used in ABA for on-task behavior, reduction of nicotine. It's been used in challenging behaviors. Behavioral contracts are a great example of self-monitoring. Children or adults taking data on themselves is a great example of self-monitoring as well. There's a lot of benefits. It doesn't take a lot of training sessions to establish. When you're working with individuals, it's a really common daily procedure. Budgeting is a form of self-monitoring. Setting up a schedule in a workout app is a form of self-monitoring. All of these different behaviors that we do every day without thinking, a lot of those are self-monitoring behaviors. So when you go to train somebody to do it, it's not a far stretch for them. They're kind of already ready to accept the things that you're teaching. Another big benefit is that data can be really easy to collect. Things like Fitbit, step trackers are all becoming more electronic and more accurate. On my wrist, there is a Garmin wristwatch that tracks all my steps, all my sleep, my heart rate. It tracks my location. It tracks, how many miles I run, how many miles I don't run, more like it. It tracks all of these things. It tracks my cadence, like all of these things that I wouldn't even be able to, ever make actual decisions off of because of the amount of data it collects. I have at my fingertips, which makes this type of research more and more, less challenging than it was in the past. So the purpose of this article is to analyze the benefits, note all of the easy ways that we can engage in this research, and then actually analyze how self-monitoring can lead to behavior change and what type of articles are published about it. Start to look at how much evidence is there for this type of intervention, because it does make sense. It does make sense that you can be your own therapist. There's a lot of easy back and forth that can go there. So it makes sense. And we're just trying to figure out, is it common? Is it happening? And are we doing research over it? So this was a review of published articles, and I'm going to go over the criteria for inclusion. And I don't usually go over this because I think that sometimes they're a little redundant, but I'm going to, when we talk about the article selection process, I think it's important to know what their inclusion articles were, because I think they might have excluded a lot of articles that may have been valid here. So the first was a peer-reviewed journal, then a single subject design. I wish they would have included randomized controlled trials. I don't see why they wouldn't have included those. It might have just been more difficult in terms of data collection purposes, but I wish I would have seen that. They needed original data. The dependent variable was related to physical activity, an important one. The independent variable was some form of self-monitoring, and that I think probably excluded the most amount of articles, which makes sense because we're looking at self-monitoring, but it makes me wonder how many things that we excluded that could be classified as a form of self-monitoring, or maybe a form of beginning self-monitoring if we had, stretched our definition a little bit. And finally, the time period was within the last 50 years. So they identified with their electronic search over 1,600 articles. Then they used their exclusion criteria, and 77 articles remained. And then 69 more were excluded, and there was only 8 left. And then after, they called it forward searching all of the citations, they found a total of 19 articles in 20 different studies. And that's why I wanted to point out the inclusion criteria, because we ended with not many studies. And I think that's significant when you talk about 50 years worth of research and analysis. And we have 20 or so-ish studies on this topic. I think we need more. I think right for future research, if you're looking. When it came to coding the articles, they found some patterns. There was 3 main types of self-monitoring. The first was goal setting. The next was self-feedback in some way, self-recording. And then finally, there was multiple different interventions combined. In terms of technology, they divided it into using a fitness tracker, some other type of device, a heart rate monitor, or of course, multiple different devices. The success of the intervention was done primarily via visual analysis, and there was some discussion of high success estimates, like high effect sizes, but they didn't have some strong statistical evidence to back up their meta-analysis. Big weakness, I think, especially considering the ease of including some form of statistical analysis. We had the review, Dowdy et al. In 2021, where they talked a lot about statistical analysis and the need of putting it into our meta-analysis. I also think that including quantitative statistics in a paper like this is especially important. A paper that doesn't discuss specifically our little niche, because in a way there's some sense that this article could go viral in the scientific space. It could be pushed out into different disciplines, and different disciplines that don't use single case design and would scoff at visual analysis being used. So I wish they had added quantitative analysis. I really do. And I think that if I could go back and redo this article, that would be the thing I would add. In terms of the results, unsurprisingly, multiple intervention components were used most often, and the fitness tracker was the most popular. Walking or steps were often tracked as the the dependent variable. I say it doesn't surprise me because really what I just stated, those 3 statements, multiple intervention components, a fitness tracker, and walking, are really the 3 easiest ways to collect data and things to collect them on. Using a multiple intervention generally assures some type of large behavior change. A fitness tracker can be easily bought and paid for now and given to somebody. And walking or steps are easily tracked by a fitness tracker. So it really is not surprising that the most convenient route was chosen. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that the fact that we're getting research out there is more important, but I think that there's a lot of expansion that could be done in this area, which includes looking at things that aren't easily tracked, like maybe oxygen levels or things like that after moderate and vigorous activities. So what type of self-monitoring procedure should we use in our day-to-day life? Well, this analysis generally showed us that multiple methods seem to be a solid first direction. So instead of using one component, it might be worthwhile, if you're looking for a large effect, to just immediately jump to a multiple treatment option. Goal setting was extremely common in these successful interventions, as was feedback of some sorts. So including some type of large goal. If you're going from a couch to a 5K, go ahead and schedule that 5K, and then book the brunch for after you finish your 5K, so you can get your, fancy waffle from IHOP or something. And then as you're training, look for some sort of feedback. Maybe that's even posting your runs to Facebook and getting social feedback. Maybe that is as simple as getting a nod from your significant other when you come back in from the house, that they show their impressed attitude of you. Some type of feedback is important, though. And I think it's positive feedback in the form of, getting praise, and also just general feedback in terms of, yes, you're doing the thing, you're working out, or et cetera, et cetera. That's really the main pull from this article in terms of self-monitoring. And it comes with a lot of limitations. The fact that we have multiple methods as being the most common procedure leads to a big lack of component analysis analyses being used in this research line and a big area for future research. Is a goal setting or feedback important? Are they both needed? Where does the fitness trackers lie? Does it matter if the person looks at their watch and sees how many steps they take? We need the component analysis to clarify the behavioral principles at work. Right now, what we have is an assumption, and that assumption is these things generally work together. Another big limitation was the lack of maintenance data reported. This was pretty shocking. Out of the 20 studies, only 4 reported maintenance data, and only 1 time did the behavior maintain. I think it would have been interesting to look and read all those 20 articles and see in what conditions the researchers were under. I know a lot of times these things are done in schools, so perhaps, semesters were ending or things like that. I think you can explain away the lack of maintenance data, but it's a little concerning nonetheless. I think we should try to include that type of data as much as possible. And the fact that such a large and important research field or research topic only has one paper that reports on maintenance data is a weakness for sure. 4 papers that report on maintenance data, but only 1 time did the behavior maintain. Big weakness. So in terms of our key takeaways, I think that, as I said, this area is ready for a future researcher and maybe even a group of future researchers. There needs to be more analysis in this area. I think, we're going to talk about metaphysics later on in the week, and I talk about the need to accept certain assumptions as we move forward into different branches of behavior analysis and move into different fields. But this is something we should definitely be into. As behavior analysts, this is right up our alley. And I wish we had more analysis in this area. So I don't know, I get that the contingencies in place support the continued publication and analysis of early intervention, special education style learners. But we've got to get some funding in these different areas because we could do so much good work. And I just can't wait to see it because it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. My second key takeaway is the goal setting and feedback are still crucial points. It's consistent with OBM research. It was the main things that were present in Gravina et al. In 2021 in her article about OBM and setting rounding procedures in a hospital. Feedback, goal setting, extremely important. And I don't think that there'll be a time when they're not important. I think they just will remain a crucial agent for behavior change. So for our consideration, our first one of 2022, I ask you, in what ways has your personal behavior change resolution lined up with your ABA experience? As I said before, there hasn't been many times when my, ability to analyze behavior and change it in my work has really helped that much in my day-to-day life. People sometimes joke, it's like, oh, you must be the most amazing parent because you're a behavior analyst. No, my kid changes my behavior more than I change his behavior. So it doesn't really work as well for me in the home life. But in what way has your, behavior change processes at home been affected by your ABA life? And maybe there are things that you don't even realize. Maybe you tend to create more visuals than you used to, or maybe you tend to, make more objective goals. You say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds versus I'm going to look better. Different things like that. I think it's just fun to analyze our own biases. Anyways, I hope everyone has a really good week and a really good start to 2022. We're going to be talking about a lot of different OBM style feedback things actually on Wednesday's episode, which is a One Less Lonely Practitioner with my friend Caitlin. And then on Friday, we're going to be going over metaphysics, which is a very interesting topic, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys about it. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for listening. Find me at my website, behavioristsbookclub.com, and I will see you all again later.